Hey guys, welcome back, it's Ripe again. In today's video, a town council stole the property of a veteran while he was fighting in World War II. They built an entire neighborhood on his farmland without permission. Here is what happened, let's dive right into the video. The first one starts like this. I should start by saying that this story is not mine, but actually something that happened to my grandfather. I felt that it was worth sharing his story now as a way to honor his memory following his recent funeral. Rest in peace, old man. I was too young to appreciate him until it was too late, but will always have his wonderful stories. While he may have only appeared to be an ordinary man, this goes to show that you should never underestimate a war veteran. So the year was 1946, and after spending the last few years deep in the trenches of France, my grandpa, now known as Captain Ice for his cool under-pressure attitude, was preparing to return home to Great Britain. Following the end of the war, he had been stationed at the border to maintain the peace, watching in envy until his was the last unit to leave. At this point, he had not met my grandma yet and had no family to speak of, but he owned a small farm in the countryside that he was looking forward to getting back to. He had quite a surprise to return to the area, finding it heaving with new houses and roads everywhere he looked. Houses covered whole fields like they were the crop of the season. While he was a little saddened to see his village change so much in his absence, he knew at the very least his farm would be a happy sight. Navigating the concrete maze, he turned the corner again and again, stopping several times to consult his paper map, certainly now outdated. By his reckoning, he was standing on the farm now, but all he saw was houses, houses and more houses. After a frustrating couple more attempts, he stopped to ask a passerby, only to hear, "That decrepit old farm was torn down last July. It's all houses now. You like it?" He gritted his teeth against the remark and set off to find the ones responsible for the destruction. His first stop after the unpleasant discovery was the town wall, which luckily was the same building as he remembered. The reception was quiet, with little signs of life to speak of. Approaching the desk, it took a few minutes to rouse the attention of a lady from the back room to answer him. After my grandpa explained the situation, the lady audibly gasped. After finding no records of my address in her filing cabinet, she left his query on hold while she talked with the supervisor. An hour later, she returned with a death certificate shockingly marked with my grandfather's name. In their absence, the town council had pronounced his death and then made quick use of the space. Whether by mistake or a scrupulous councillor, they wasted no time in seizing his farm and demolishing it, making way for a housing boom sweeping the nation. But that left my grandfather in quite a predicament. With no home to speak of, no family, and little money to his name, he was left homeless. The receptionist, as kind as she was similarly stumped on the issue and had no solution that she could give. What she did do was promise to file the query to the higher-ups, and I would be contacted with news soon. 2 weeks of couch surfing and sleeping rough passed by without so much as a whisper of news. He wanted to wait, believing they were doing their best, but after 2 weeks it had become too much. He returned to the town hall to find a different receptionist flooded with concerned citizens crowding around her desk. He could do nothing else but join the queue. When he did finally get to speak, he found the receptionist was oblivious to his request and after searching had no record of it at all. This struck him quite odd as he signed the form himself and saw the receptionist file it away. He gave way to a flash of anger and demanded to speak to the supervisor again, who luckily remembered him. In the confines of their office, they explained that his matter was reviewed and closed last week, excusing the fate that no one had even bothered to tell him. The supervisor was cold and very matter-of-fact as they explained the legal processes. My grandfather had lost his farm on a technicality and the town did not owe him a penny for it. Stuck in a situation that neither side wanted to be in, my grandpa insisted on a meeting to discuss the issue more seriously, which was arranged after much reluctance. He was told to sit in the waiting room and wait. He did as hours flew by until he called into a small office that same afternoon. Inside, he saw the earlier supervisor and the newly introduced chairman of the town council. The meeting immediately turned into what felt like an interrogation, as my grandfather was subjected to a lot of skepticism and apathy. The councillors wanted to first prove his identity and ownership of the land, which, when it was verified, their requests became more and more menial. It was clear at the time that they were looking for any excuse to discredit or ignore his claim, happy to put him under as much pressure or ridicule necessary to scare him off. My grandpa, on the other hand, had other plans, staying strong and meeting all their requests with composure. Rather than give in and admit defeat, the counselors regretfully informed my grandpa that as his death certificate was not amended within the time period, he legally lost rights to his lands and property. He argued his case that he would have done that had he known about it and not been fighting a war at the time. Though they looked unsympathetic to his answer, my grandpa was forced to leave the meeting empty-handed, hearing sighs of relief from the office behind him. My grandpa, who was still effectively homeless during this time, was not about to let them slide this under the rug. He visited the town hall every day to ask the same questions and chase up the same outcome. After each attempt, he soon realized the people that were meant to be helping him gradually found him more of an annoyance, turning his case into one that they wanted to ignore even more. On his 10th day, he found a police car parked outside waiting for him, who prevented him from entering the building. The men were sincerely more understanding to his situation, but they still had a job to do. They were called about harassment, stalking, and intimidation, all of which were false, of course. While they were giving him a lecture, he noticed over their shoulders there were figures poking through the blinds of their offices, watching them closely. My grandfather knew these men for what they were: spineless, cruel cowards. These were petty attempts to keep him out of the town hall, to keep him quiet and out of the way. Resilient as my grandpa was, he was not about to take this kind of treatment from anyone, so if the town council wanted a war, by God, he would give them war. Everything so far had been done discreetly. The authorities wanted to keep him quiet, even threatening him with the police to ensure his silence. So it made sense. The first thing he had to do was the one thing they wanted to avoid: taking it public and loud. My grandfather chose the busiest day and time to visit the town hall and personally hand them the lawsuit, complete with a speech that left him escorted off the premises, where he continued to draw crowds. His lawyer said the councillors wanted another meeting to discuss his settlement privately, no doubt to keep the case quiet, but my grandfather ignored their plea. The next time he saw them, he was suited up in court, ready to fight for his home once more. He found the legal procedures long and the loopholes tedious, but after weeks of trials, it finally came to an end with a clear winner. And finally, the town council was ordered to pay the full value of the farm, plus emotional damages, to a total of £4,000, which would be £200,000 today. While the victory was bittersweet, my grandfather was able to use that money to move towns, start a new farm, and meet my grandma. His darkest days were behind him now, but he would always be a soldier. And yeah, ripe stars, I'm happy that the story took a turn and had a positive ending. However, it's still sad that the veteran lost his farm. And even though today at least £200,000 is quite a lot, the emotional value of that farm is probably more than £200,000. But anyway, if you have watched until here, please don't forget to like the video and maybe even leave a comment, because that would help me tremendously. The next one is a petty revenge story. A few years ago, my girlfriend and I used to live in a small building with only a handful of apartments and a tiny garden we shared with the rest of the residents. My neighbor was this guy everyone hated, constantly blaring music, leaving trash in front of his door, loud drunken grill parties all weekend, every weekend, and ignoring all requests to keep it down. Of course, citing his rights to be loud. You of course know the one I'm talking about. So our window had a direct view to the garden, where he hosted said grill parties, despite numerous requests to let other people use the space too. And one day I noticed he had similar sound system to ours. It required no authentication for a Bluetooth connection, so I wrote a program that would connect to his speakers the moment he turned them on, and played the same 15 seconds of adult gay video on repeat. He kept taking the speakers to the service, which obviously did not help, so he bought a newer set. His new sound system could connect to Wi-Fi. Since he made the mistake of loudly announcing his Wi-Fi password to his guests regularly, I connected to it, realized he never changed the default router password, and wrote another program that connected automatically and kept rotating his admin password. I even set up my old laptop to run this program continuously. It also kept streaming the previously mentioned adult videos to his TV at random intervals and printed a luscious cucumber pic whenever his printer came online, and either abruptly changed the volume of his speakers every 47 minutes or kept subtly increasing and decreasing it through several hours. I saw people from our ISP at his apartment several times trying to fix his network, to no avail. The moment they reset his Wi-Fi, my program was already there, changing the admin password. After about 3 months of this, they gave him a new router with a new password, which he never changed, and promptly announced to his friends the following weekend. So instead of his usual blaring music, we listened to him yell and smash kitchenware the last few weeks before he finally moved out. It was like music to our ears nonetheless. Edit, I'm getting the feeling the technical aspects of this might sound unfeasible to some. Let me clarify, I had his default Wi-Fi password that he never changed. Same for his router, we had the same ISP, obviously I knew the default password and which IP address it was running on. He gave me unfettered access to his whole home network with zero hacking involved. At least 70% of the mentioned programs were just pre-recorded macros, so all I needed was some free time, nowhere near as impressive as it sounds at first. And the next one is a malicious compliance fence story. So this story does not actually involve me, but my father. Background, my parents bought a property on the beach because it's their happy place and they didn't want to stay at hotels anymore. The place is an older property that needed a lot of love, so we've been renovating it for a good year in our spare time. Our neighbor is an older lady who runs the small motel next door. From the very beginning, she's been quite an annoyance, constantly doing and saying manipulative things as favors to make us feel like we owe her something, which usually ends in her being allowed to use parts of our property. Fun fact, an inspector that was checking on the renovations once saw her coming towards him and quipped, "Here comes trouble." So the main story involves the side of our property that we share with her. There is a fence that she built and a small alleyway between the fence and our house, which is ours and has a hose and shower area for when you come back from the beach and want to get the sand off of you. As part of the renovations, my dad had some small aluminum panels put in our side of the fence so that the users of the shower could have privacy. The panels are not visible from the neighbor's property and are completely unobtrusive. Neighbor sees them while passing by and freaks out. Frantically calls and texts my dad begging for a callback and saying it's an emergency. My dad makes time to call, assuming the hose might have broken or something, but nope, just a neighbor throwing a hissy fit over the panels. "Take them down," she insists. My dad is a very busy man and has already had enough of my neighbor's constant annoyances. Her claiming an emergency just for these panels finally made him snap. So now the malicious compliance. My dad, the amicable man he is, agrees to take the panels down. As part of the renovations, he also has a gate put in front of that small alleyway area. This is not good for my neighbor because she made an agreement with my father to use our hose so that her guests could rinse themselves off when coming back from the beach. This precious hose is now behind a locked gate, the key for which my neighbor will not be seeing. On top of that, my father put a chain in front of the parking area of our house, which she was using as extra space for her guests and where our trash cans are kept. Trash cans which said neighbor was using to throw away her extra trash. Now our neighbor will have to pay extra for a better water plan for her motel, something she was well aware of and trying to avoid as she had previously told my dad about the numbers for water plans on her property versus ours. And possibly pay for extra trash cans for her trash. My dad is a very patient man and very hard to get angry, but once you do, you're gonna regret it. Edit, I see some people mentioning it in the comments, so I feel like I should clarify. The hose was being fed through the fence, so her guests were on her property when they were using it. It's better safe than sorry though, in case of liability. And the next one is an Am I the A-hole story. My daughter and I were recently on vacation. We spent the day in an area that's known to have a lot of rich and famous people, and towards the end of the day, we saw one of my daughter's favorite celebrities, we will call her A, walking out of a store. My daughter ran to the store, but when she got near A, she was stopped by A's security. They said that A is there with her daughter for her daughter's birthday and wants to focus on her daughter. My daughter was very upset because she's been a fan of A for a very long time, so she tried again for a picture but was turned away. My daughter was crushed, so later that night I made a post talking about my experience with A. How she could not let anyone go near her and her daughter, and the fact that her security was rude and her not being willing to stop for a couple of seconds for a picture. I understand it's her daughter's birthday, but a minute interaction with a fan is not gonna ruin her day, and if it does, that girl needs to learn that the world doesn't revolve around her. The post ended up getting a lot of attention and a lot of people actually said my daughter and I were being entitled for expecting A to interrupt her daughter's birthday for everyone that wants a picture. Well, my husband also saw the post and said he couldn't believe that I I would bash her for trying to spend the day with her daughter. I'm not trying to bash her for spending the day with her daughter, but she would not be where she is without her fans, so I think she at least owes it to them to take a picture. And yeah, ripe stars, I think some people forget that celebrities also have something called privacy, or at least they have a right to privacy, and they are people just like we are, except probably that they have more money. Anyway, let me know what you think about this in the comments. Someone on Reddit said, "You're the a-hole." Even though it could have been a simple 1-minute interaction, a lot of people forget that celebrities are also people. It's insane that you believe your daughter was owed a picture just because they would not be where they are without their fans. Celebrities deserve some time for themselves and their families too. A was respectful enough to decline. I'm sure she apologized to your daughter too, but you and your daughter also need to learn to respect others, including famous people. Comment number 2, you're the a-hole, and you even said it yourself. That girl needs to learn that the world doesn't revolve around her, except applied to your daughter and yourself. Can you imagine how many times A's family has been interrupted by people that, on her daughter's birthday, she wanted it not to happen? Just because someone is a celebrity and you like them a lot, it doesn't give you the right to any of their time or attention. Just find an appropriate time for it, and if they say, "No, sorry, not right now," accept it and move on. Comment number 3, you're the a-hole. The celebrity is entitled to her private life too. I'm sure her daughter is sick of having to share her mother with the world and would like to have one normal day with her. You should respect that. And the next one is titled, "Okay, that will be 4 weeks." A million years ago, I worked for a leasing company. We leased anything from manufacturing equipment to jets, but our bread and butter was computers. One fine day, a customer calls in to find their salesman is on vacation. They don't like that, not one bit, and after being told that no, they will not be getting the number to his hotel in Aruba, they are passed on to Tommy. Tommy was the new guy, but in a good way. A customer would ask for something and he would spend 2 days reading white papers, benchmarks and calling vendors to find the answer himself when there was a guy fully conversant in that technology 2 cubes away. Anyway, the customer wants 16 workstations in a hurry, SGI Octane dual processor with 128 MB video cards, 4 GB of memory and monitors. They don't care how much it costs, but they need them as soon as possible. Tommy tells them he will call back in an hour, he needs to speak to the vendors. Vendor number 1 will take 3 weeks at least, they are out of stock. Vendor number 2 will take 2 weeks and cost 20% more since they will have to upgrade existing systems. SGI themselves quote 3 weeks. Tommy, for the first time in his life, remembers we had a former executive from SGI on staff and calls him begging for a contact that might make it faster. Executive: how about today? We have 20 of them in the warehouse. Sure, they are supposed to go to the customer, but that won't be for another 2 months. We can play some games with serial numbers on the lease after the replacements come in. Tommy thanked him and called the customer back. Customer: it's been almost 2 hours. Next time don't promise a deadline you cannot meet. Tommy: yeah, I know, and I'm sorry. I had to work pretty hard to track down what you need, and well, I've got some good news and some bad news. Customer: you called vendor number 1? Tommy: yep, they cannot have them to you for 3 weeks. Customer: you call any other vendors? Tommy: vendor number 2, they want a markup but can have it in 2 weeks. I also spoke with. Customer: what about the manufacturer? Tommy: I called them too, they also want 3 weeks, but we have. Customer: how much of a markup does vendor number 2 want? Tommy: 20%, but that doesn't matter because. Customer: go ahead and order them. Tommy: you haven't heard the. Customer: if I ever hear another effing word out of your mouth, it will be too soon. Just get it ordered and I expect paperwork by 8 AM tomorrow. The customer paid an extra $250,000 plus interest and fees, and the guys in services got an extra 2 months to play Doom. With the reship delays on the order, they did not get their machines for 4 weeks. And I would say, guys, that's a pretty steep price to pay for being an a-hole. But I suppose an extra $250,000 is just what you would call karma. And the next one is titled, X bought himself a gift as a gift to me, so I did the same. This happened a couple of Christmases ago, but someone told me to post this story here, so here I am. About 4 months before Christmas 2018, my boyfriend at the time accidentally spilled a drink on his laptop and wrecked the thing. He could not afford a new one and it was his main source of entertainment, so I said he could borrow mine since I did not use it that often. Everything was fine until Christmas that year. He still had not gotten a new laptop by that point, but I assumed that was because he was saving up to get himself a decent laptop rather than a crappy one he could just about afford. Anyway, he handed me my gift, and to my surprise, it was a brand new laptop. I assumed that he bought me a laptop to replace my old one and was going to take my old laptop for himself. But nope, his gift to me was buying himself a new laptop so that he did not have to use mine anymore. Nothing else, just that. I was outraged, but then a petty thought crossed my mind. Little did he know that I had fallen into a bit of money, so I had decided to surprise him with a top-of-the-range gaming laptop, which was easily more than double the price and quality of the one that he bought himself. So I decided to give him his present. When he opened, his eyes lit up and he looked so excited at the prospect of his new laptop, but when he started to open it, I took it back from him and told him that it was actually for me and my gift was letting him keep his new laptop without me trying to use it all of the time. Of course, we got into a massive argument and that eventually led to us breaking up. Thankfully, we exchanged gifts a few days before Christmas, so the day was not ruined. I returned the laptop and used the money to go on a spontaneous holiday with my friend for a New Year's Eve. No regrets. And damn guys, that story definitely took sort of a dark turn. I expected something more positive, to be honest. And with this, we have reached the end of the video. However, if you cannot get enough of my content, please check out my endless playlist, where you can find thousands of hours of content. In addition, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel to not miss any of my daily uploads. Thank you so much in advance, and I hope to see you again tomorrow.